Should we sit in order?
Yeah, probably.
Sit in the order of our
You know, so you can figure it out
It's our first time.
I love it. Well, I'm Cynthia Freeland. I work at the NFL Network with my friend here, Mike Band. I'm also a data scientist, and I'm really happy to be here. It's my second time here at reInvent, which is very fun. I'd like to introduce to my left Mike Band. He's a senior manager of Next-Gen Stats Research and Analytics. You can read his title just like I can, but I would like to tell you that he's about to become a two-time dad. He's already a one-time dad. Yay! We like that. Julie Souza, she's the principal of sports marketing here at AWS. She's the head of all of everything that AWS is doing in our world, at least. So Julie, and also we used to work together at Disney.
Yes.
You know, fun fact, small world. And last but not least, you know him from being the absolute best analyst on TV. And it's not even, like, that's not even hyperbole, and I'm not saying it because he's sitting there and much larger than me. But Greg Olsen, a three-time Pro Bowler, the first tight end with 3 consecutive 1,000 receiving yard seasons, 2-time Emmy Award winner, will be like 6 before he kind of hangs that one up too. Current Fox analyst, the best one, Greg Olsen too. So happy to be joined by you guys.
Good to be here.
All right, guys, so it's about to be, or I guess it is, going to be the 10th season of Next Gen Stats, partnered with AWS, which has kind of flown by, if I'm honest. We started out with all of these speeds, how fast is a player running, et cetera. Julie, take us back a decade ago. Tell us how this all kind of came to be.
I think you're hitting an interesting point because it started sort of simply, right? The league started collecting data. They have sensors in the shoulder pads and the ball is chipped. And they're collecting things like speed, time, distance. So those were the early day analytics. But now with the power of technology and predictive tools with AI, you can start getting much more advanced in the analytics. So you've seen Next-Gen Stats really evolve with that, with the technology to become much more interesting, I think, much more predictive, and much more engaging. So that's where it started, where it is, and where it's going.
We'll get to where it's going. I remember I came to the NFL Network in 2016, and we would do these video carousel, or these pictures, and they'd say, the speed that Tyreek Hill got to was 22.96 miles per hour. Like, I mean, it's fast, but like, how fast is it? I don't even know. Like, is that good? Like, how good is it? So Mike worked on all of the next-gen stats throughout the league. He has for a long time. His background, he can tell you, or I can tell you, he worked at the team level. He's done it with talking to other broadcasters across all of the networks, and he has to figure out how to herd all of the cats at the NFL Network as we were trying to figure out how to implement all of this stuff. So give us a little bit of what was back then and how did it kind of come to where we are today?
Yeah, about 10 years ago, we were relegated to box score stats. And certainly there were companies out there like Pro Football Focus, Sports Info Solutions that were doing manual hand-charted data. So this meant that you could take our GSIS box score stats and come up with stats.
GSIS is like it's the main service that does all of the box scores for everyone.
Exactly.
Sorry.
And so you can derive stats like, yards, tackles, touchdowns, the basic stuff that's been around for over 100 years. And with Next-Gen Stats coming along in 2015, every player, Greg was there in those early days, had 2 RFID chips in their shoulder pads, and that created that XY tracking data. And so about 10 years ago, we were just worried about storing the data, collecting the data, and we were getting into the processing and the analytic, deriving those meaningful stats from it. But it really, as you said, going from speed, distance, to now much more complex data points like completion probability, what coverage they ran. It's been a really fun ride and a journey that we've had AWS be there every step of the way.
Before we ask Greg what this data meant to him as a player, which next-gen stat do you wish that you could have had on Greg that we could have from his former data? Because I could tell you, I want to know forced missed tackles. I want to know how many times you just were see ya, and got past.
Not as many. You should pick a different stat.
Yak? There we go.
I will say, yeah, absolutely. And just to see,
I'll let you know what I'm good at, and I'll get back to you.
Just to know the style of what Greg was doing on the field, right? Was he in the slot? Was he in line and tight? Was he out wide? How often was he targeted? How much yak did he get per play? But not just how much yak did he gain over expectation? We've really developed a whole suite of metrics that really tell the story beyond just that basic number.
So what was data about 10 years ago to you when you were at the end of your career? What did it mean to you?
You know, so I came in the league in 2007. So from 2007 to 2015, it was actually the year we went to the Super Bowl, ironically. Up until that point, we were box score stats ourselves, right? We would get scouting reports, we would get evaluations of the other team, and for us on offense, we would get the little, the coach would give the Wednesday scouting report, and it was total yards given up, total points given up, rushing yards per game, passing yards per game, completion percentage. And I kind of look back on it now as I prepare for games on this side of my career. I spend exactly 0 minutes worrying about any of those stats. And they are completely irrelevant to determining good teams versus bad teams. There's just no context anymore. But from 2007 to 2015, as they're saying, that's all we were privy to. That's all we had. And some of the teams had some more advanced analytics departments who were upstairs doing it more manual. It was a lot of game film evaluation, and they were trying to get next level type stats, but it was all through observation. It was all through manual. It was not machine learning. It was not data points. We did not yet have the geo tracking on the field, size, speed, location, how far were you from me when I caught it, yards of separation. Like, we didn't have any of those metrics, so you could only go based on what you see. So as a player, I would say the last, I retired in 2020. So from 15 to 20, compared to where we are now in 2025, as I'm evaluating this, as I prepare for my games each week, we haven't gone from like 0 to 60. We've gone from 0 to like 6,000. Right? It is just grown so exponentially year in and year out. Even when I called my first ever game in 2021, my next gen stats and the information that I was provided, or just the different stats we were able to provide in real time during the game on just the little like box, the 2 box on the bottom or whatever, I don't even know what they call them. What we can do now, it pales in comparison back then. And I embrace it. It's a huge part of my preparation. I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy kind of seeing the game through that lens. So it's a huge resource nowadays for players, coaches, and obviously those of us who are responsible for presenting the game accurately.
So let's put your player hat. We're asking you to do double duty here. So your player hat and your analyst hat. From your player hat, if you were going to play today, what would you ask your analytics team to give you? Yeah,
it's a great question. So I think big picture wise, which is so easy for them to spit out now, is just to get me started of understanding, okay, who is this defense, right? Who are they? What's their play style? Is this a single high safety team? Are they going to play, how many guys are they going to play at or near the line of scrimmage? Am I going to force press coverage or off? Is it going to be zone or man? Just give me like the highlight points that I know, okay, when I put on the film, instead of me having to chart, okay, back when I used to watch film, we could sort based on situation. So I could pull up every play of the Dallas Cowboys defense the last 3 weeks. Then I would have to filter everything. And I'd have to filter first and second down, passes, zone, cover 3, boom, 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 and 45 plays would pop up. Nowadays, I don't have to spend all of that time putting that on. So if I was a player now, in one email, in one phone call, the ability for them to produce everything you can possibly imagine about a particular team, a particular strategy. Here's what they do on early downs. Here's what they want to be on third down. Who blitzes? Okay, yeah, they blitz a lot. Okay, who blitzes? Is it guys on the line of scrimmage? Is it guys off the line of scrimmage? Is it defensive backs? Is it linebackers? We used to have to do all of that by just the eye test. Watch hours and hours and hours of film. Nowadays, these guys can evaluate plays in huge sample sizes, almost in real time, and produce that data that in one quick, simple spreadsheet, I can tell you more about the Dallas Cowboys defense than if I spent 2 months watching the film.
He was doing this with his hand. I believe that was a remnant.
That's my clicker.
The cowboy clicker, that was a remnant.
Listen, we're hardwired a very certain way, and when you get going, your body just reacts to what it's used to.
That means he just watched hours and hours of film, and now he can do that a lot faster. So, Mike, you were an analyst, and given your background as an analyst to now what you do today, which is quite different, right? You're now asked to give a lot more insights that are maybe a little higher level as opposed to going super deep into something. What excites you most about what AWS allows you to do? What can you do now that you wish you could have done when you were working? He used to work for the Vikings, so what would you like to tell the Vikings?
It's really all about the expertise that they bring to us, and not just the expertise that we can go out and say, hey, AWS ProServe team, we really have this dream in mind, and we'd love to help you build it for us. It's not like that. We actually get to work with them and build it together. And that collaboration levels up our team. AWS is essentially the water that lifts the NGS team's boat. And that once we learn a technique, once we learn a modeling technique to build a neural net to identify what coverage a team is running, well, we can use that same architecture and now estimate what route a receiver ran. It's very much all about us becoming smarter and more capable from the data science perspective. And really, AWS has leveled up our capabilities. So when we started, it might have been XGBoost and tree-based models. Now we're in building deep learning neural nets and getting into the AI world. And really, it's the evolution that we've gotten to see really with this whole wave of AI, going from sort of narrow AI to now more general solutions.
Is there something you're spending a lot more time on now? This is off topic, but is there something you're spending a lot more time on looking at now that you're able to look at these different types of different types of ways of sourcing the data, sorting the data,
right,
using it that you didn't anticipate? Is something popping up that you didn't think you were going to be able to use?
There's so much value in the two-dimensional data that we get right now from Zebra, the hardware service, and what we provide and analyze, and we're still able to mine and derive a lot of statistics from that. It might be run blocking, an area of focus that we might be a little weak in the number of stats. And so what we have found is every project that we've done with AWS, and we've done at least one machine learning project with them every year for the last 9 years. And each of those projects, we've learned a little something that we brought to the next project. And when AWS approached us and said, hey, we would love to help you build that next series of stats, we were like, okay, we can take it on for a little bit, and maybe you can help us with that more difficult thing that is a little bit outside of our bound of capabilities. And so every year we feel like we are more equipped with the tools, the knowledge, and the expertise for us to go do it ourselves, and then AWS can come in and help pull off the things that we can only dream of.
Can I add one point to that? Yeah. Just because I think it's important. Just as somebody who works directly with these guys as they produce all of this information and provide us like reams and reams of data points and trends and all of that through the course of the week. There's two levels to all of this, right? There's the data and the ability to mine it and interpret it and produce information from it. But then there also is the next level, which everyone always asks me, like, why am I on my broadcast and why am I spending so much time championing why this data is so important and why we need to continue to understand how coaches and players are manipulating the data to make decisions and all of these things that are driving what's going on game day and frankly throughout the course of the week. There is a responsibility, and this is like where I feel like people like me come in, where they can produce as much information as humanly possible. And it's from, I don't even know what he's talking about. But when we get these printouts, it's much more in like layman's terms. It's not like from a data scientist. They're talking in football terms, which makes sense to me. It is now our job to take this very complicated data, completion percentage over expected, air yards per attempt, all these things that people are not accustomed to hearing. They're not accustomed to people speaking the game of football to them. That's where our responsibility as analysts and broadcasters and just advocates of the NFL brand, where we have to continue to educate the viewer on this is not some big bad boogeyman, right? That we have to all put up our defense. Like, we are talking to you how they're talking in coaches' meetings and in player evaluations at the combine and how they're making personnel decisions and who to sign in free agency and who to let walk. Like, these are happening in real time in every one of the 32 buildings across the country. And we need to continue to do a good job, probably I would argue a better job as an industry, the media, of talking this in a way that's not threatening, it's not bizarre, it's not hard to comprehend, because whether the fan likes it or not, this element of football is just gonna continue to expand.
So there's not one analytics overlord that lives somewhere that we could like go to and ask him if they should go for it?
I think it's me.
It's you?
I'm just kidding, I don't know.
What were you going to say?
No,
it's Keegan.
I'm just going to say that's a really important point, because the data, it's got to mean something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why does it matter? We can do all the analytics in the world, but if the data doesn't matter if it isn't driving some sort of outcome. And we're talking about making the fans smarter, making better coaching decisions, players using it for their own training and whatnot. That it's got to have a purpose. And I think not only are you in the very critical job of being that sort of envoy or ambassador of the data to the fans, but also like there are technologies within production as well. So augmenting, and you guys we've seen this with like defensive alerts and things like that, right? Where you can start training people's eyes to, hey, there's a potential blitz happening here. And people start to like, yep. I literally like, at that, is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen? And then it happens and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so smart. I knew that was gonna happen. Meanwhile, you showed me that was gonna happen, right? But it's using the data in a way that's engaging, not alienating.
Yeah, it's like a practicality component to it.
Yeah.
So let's talk, I think that it's very fascinating because a lot of times, so sports are this nice Trojan horse for operationalizing things that people have to do in their own jobs. So I would like to make the parallel here between how someone could maybe take what we're doing for sports and use it for their own job. So here's my question. It's Tuesday because Monday Night Football hasn't happened yet. It's about to happen, but it hasn't happened. Tuesday morning, what does Greg ask you?
Well, first, we have to break down the whole team, both sides of the ball to understand tendencies, right? It really starts with the coaching staff.
Wait, so okay, what you have which game this week?
I have the Bengals at the Buffalo Bills.
Then what will you do?
We're going to go look at the Buffalo Bills. We're going to start with Joe Brady's offense because that's a big story right now.
Joe Brady's the offensive coordinator for the Bills.
And so what they did on the ground, they ran the same play over and over again. I think they ran duo.
They were duo 100 times.
Exactly. And what we're going to do is we're going to go look at the data and try to prove what you would see on tape. And we want to create these narratives that are supported by the data. We call them insights. And so what we're going to do is we're going to gather we've got a team of 10 NGS analysts who right now are working on these packets for Greg and team.
While I'm in Vegas. It works out great.
And what we do is we send them an initial packet, and later in the week, about Thursday rolls around, and Keegan in the audience, you should definitely ask Keegan Abdul plenty of questions. He's just as smart as I am on all this stuff. And what we're able to do is to feed you the insights, but let you ask questions. And that's the best part. Behind our computer, we've got databases, we've got dashboards, we can look it up on the fly. And so when Greg sees something and his football IQ is going to be well beyond ours, his instinct is usually right. And so we're going to be, whether it's validating or invalidating his thoughts or subjective, what he sees, that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And Greg, I think Friday night we got into a whole big thing on the 2-point conversion decision where Greg on Twitter, you should go see a lot of the conversations he's had with this decision. And a lot of that was fueled by our team. We were able to do that research at home.
We were emailing in real time and I was copy and pasting it.
And so we're able to do that support ad hoc, whether it's for the broadcast, whether it's on
they only do that
social media. That's right. It's really about making the fans at home smarter, leveling up the game and making them feel as close to the coaches in the booth as Greg is.
So here's how I would kind of recap that, because I know we have international audiences, we have a lot of different people. So Duo is basically running to the inside. Let's make it very simple. So Greg watches a game, maybe he's paying attention to Seattle because that's the game he was on this week. So he's just watching a little bit of that and he's like, wow, I see them run the same play over and over again. Then he can say to the team, he can say, I think they just ran a lot of duo. Is it because the Steelers, that's who Buffalo's playing, are bad at defending duo and they just didn't adapt? Or is it because they were doing something special with their offensive play? They can go into a lot of depth. And sometimes I would imagine Mike comes up with things that Greg's like, oh, I didn't know it was actually this, or maybe I should look at this, and it helps direct sort of the traffic of what's going on, meaning that the data insights are both like it's a collaboration between the expert eye of a guy who did it for as many years and at such a high level as Greg, and also what everything that AWS and Next Gen Stats can sort of help illuminate that maybe you didn't miss because, this man's on he's not even watching that game. So ultimately, all of those different things work hand in glove, so you're getting kind of a better storytelling situation, and the people who benefit are actually all of us, because when we're watching whatever happens in this Bills and Bengals game, I'm pretty sure the Bengals have a really bad, they allow the second most yak to running backs. I know that. So, it's going to be
good stat.
No, it's going to be interesting.
You're exactly right, and it really works both ways because I get the initial the initial pack from them early on. We have our call later in the week where we're actually all on like a Zoom and just having like open dialogue and they're in real time. Yes, you're right. Or, there's often times where I say, hey, after watching them all week and reading all this, I'm seeing this. And sometimes their data will validate what I observe. And sometimes they'll go, you might think you're seeing that, but like, it's not really what's happening. And now all of a sudden I know I don't have to get on air and be as emphatic about making a clear point because maybe my observation is not backed up. And then vice versa. I'm watching the film after reviewing their initial kind of pack, which just breaks down and gives me some general points. When I'm now watching the film of last week's game, I have all these pre-existing storylines and trends already in my brain because I've read their packet. And now I'm watching the game with a little bit clearer context. I would have to spend almost unlimited hours to be able to find out what coverages do they run on first down, what coverages do they run on second down, what coverages do they run the ball on 1st and 10, do they throw the ball on 1st and 10, what about if it's an incomplete pass, is the next play a pass or a run? It would be completely impossible for me to watch every play, chart it all, memorize it, and be able to go out there and bring unique insights to the viewer that are just not nice throw, nice catch, he's a great player, he makes $50 million, and he went to school at Georgia. We're trying to go deeper to the audience than just narrate what's happening. Tell people why it's happening, what is going to happen, and what are all the conversations leading up to what we see happen on game day. There's a reason for all of it. And then the last level to that, which is probably what I rely on them during the game the most, is it could be the simplest thing, like, hey, on the last 5 first downs, they've run the ball. That stat to the audience could be a lot more interesting if it's, hey, on the last 5 stats, the Buffalo Bills have run the ball. They pass the ball at a 95% rate, which is second highest in the league. That is very contrary. This is abnormal. Why are they doing it? Well, it's because the Cincinnati Bengals have blah, blah, blah. And then you can start getting into like the cause and effect as opposed to just saying the run game's been really good. They're very run heavy on first down. Well, are they always run heavy?
Right.
Is it because the Bengals stink? Is it because of them? Is it because they're winning? Is it because of the weather? Like, tell us there's more to than just telling people what's happening. We need to tell them why it's happening, and their data allows us to speak very confidently that what we're sharing with the audience is true.
So Julie, that actually segues perfectly into some of the evolution of the next gen stats and what we're able to put on top of our initial next gen stats. Because I think what he's getting at is like, why should you care? Why do I care if the Bills are running 3 times or 5 times on first down? Well, it's because they usually pass on first. All of these things help us develop better next-gen stats, deeper, better things built on top. So can you share some of the other things that the NFL is doing with all this data, analytics, and how AWS is helping in this initiative?
So for context, next-gen stats, it's about 500 million points of data over the course of the season, feed next-gen stats. Now, that same data is an input to a whole other swath of data, which is also the same number, 500 million points of data, but on a weekly basis, informing informing player health and safety for the league. So you get all of this, speed, time, distance, all of that feeds in, but now with optical tracking and cameras, we can also capture skeletal pose and understand where players are maybe incurring injury, at risk of injury. And the league, and there's a whole demo over there on the wall too that talks about some of the progress in terms of player health and safety. The league made a player health and safety portal available to all 32 clubs 2 years ago, right? It was the first year, 700 fewer missed games by players when that rolled out. They were able to understand which plays are more injurious than others. Swivel hip drop tackle caused a 20x injury rate over a normal pass or run play. The dynamic kickoff rule, the kickoff rules changed, right? People were all up in arms about it, but let me tell you, you were trying to solve for 2 things there. 1, 2x the injury rate, 4x the concussion rate, and nobody was actually returning the ball. So you had an uninteresting play that was far more injurious than a normal pass or run play. So taking 10,000 seasons worth of data, the league simulated the rule change to optimize for those 2 things, higher returns, lower injury rate. So you saw that unveiled last season. It's here this year as well because it did exactly that. That rule change brought the injury rate down to a normal pass and run play. And as of week 9, 79% higher kickoff returns. So, like, that's just one example of using this data and other data to look at the data in a different way and find other insights. And so that's one particularly interesting thing that we're doing, but I think equipment has changed, rules have changed, and then you're using the data in other really fun, interesting ways. I mean, you'll probably talk about the fantasy AI assistant using generative AI and agents actually to help fans draft better and make their lineups every season. So it's always something interesting, but at the base of this, it's making sense out of really large volumes of complex data. And I think that's something that transcends every industry.
That's exactly right. And just to piggyback on that with the Fantasy AI Assistant, I'll actually be on this stage tomorrow at 1 o'clock giving a talk on the Fantasy AI Assistant that AWS helped build for us a few months ago. And it's just one of the many products that NextGen Stats helps power. You can imagine that we can create as many stats as you want, and we can feed them to Greg in the broadcast, and you can see it on TV while you're watching the games. But what about those products across NFL.com, across NFL Plus, what you see across different platforms, whether it's video games or even AI? And so what we're really getting closer to is how can we take advantage of this new wave of technology? You see this Fantasy AI Assistant, we decided that, hey, we've got a lot, we're sitting on tons of great data, we've got NextGen Stats data to add that context. What if we were able to create this Fantasy AI Assistant? We had the data for it, we didn't have the expertise in AI, and that's where AWS came in to level up our ability. We were able to not just develop a Fantasy AI Assistant, we've developed a research editor. So we have a team, as I mentioned before, of 10 analysts that are at our office right now preparing for week 14. And what they're doing is they're writing 3 to 4 sentences on every player and every team of every stat we could possibly come up with. But what if their job wasn't about writing it in the perfect format? What if their job was to just find the best research? And what we did was we created an AI assistant that helped edit their work. And so before Greg even gets his packet, we made sure that the style, the format, the tone, the stats, everything went through and was passed through the system. But what we didn't want to do was say, hey, AI, go do the research, go spit it out, and we'll send whatever you have. We didn't trust it. And now as you see AI get better over the years, we are sort of catching that wave of, okay, let's first do it mainly from the human researcher side. So let our analysts do the research and help them write. Now we're going to get more into augmenting their research, the ability to find things faster, to augment what they write in a way that they can not just replace them, but allow them to do their work 2 times as fast. It's not about cost saving to replace analysts, because you need that human context to know that Lou Anarumo was the DC and the Bengals, and when he left, the whole Bengals defense went to hell.
Maybe they shouldn't have fired him.
That's right. And so that context, you can't just trust an AI to pull. But what if you have the ability to serve the human analyst to be able to use these tools to 2x their time or 4x their time to be able to not just output 50 insights, but maybe 100 insights a week. And that's how we see the future of AI happening, not as a replacement to human analysts, but as a supplement to their ability to do their job faster and more optimally.
All of the things
That was really well said.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I don't know what he's talking about, but it sounds great.
Wonderful, right? He's killing it.
I take back all the nice things I've said about the next gen. I should just be thanking the AI bots.
Well, no, they're just...
Because I didn't realize all this work that I get each week. I'm like, God, these guys are in their office grinding. They're in Vegas and apparently just running machines. So I take back everything I've said nice about you guys.
Well, I've got something that you can use if you want to that I was thinking about with the player health and safety. I heard it from a coach. You can borrow it as you want. You know, the reason that the guys who are the replacement players aren't the starters, because if they were better than the starter, they'd be starting.
That's exactly
So
right.
you can work that into your analysis this week if you want to.
Take that. It's a good note.
You know, just say, that actually does bring us into something that has been a genesis for thought for our whole team, which is the Big Data Bowl. It is a very special event. If you don't already know what it is, it's an annual competition. We give money.
Yeah.
Like, you can win money.
100,000 in prizes.
Yeah.
Well,
Prize money.
combined.
Combined.
And, you get to come to the combine, which, if you are a football fan, truly, I actually think that's worth more than the money, because you see all these people walking around in their team gear, and they look all, and everyone's happy because they think their team could win the Super Bowl. Anyways, so ultimately, what the Big Data Bowl is, we open up a certain amount of the data, the next gen stats, to teams. There are undergraduate teams and there are graduate teams, and we say solve a problem around, and we create sort of a topic. There's a theme every year, and we get to hear some of the smartest people come up with some of the coolest things that have actually turned into real parts of our next gen stats analysis. You are looking at two of the three judges. You're just...
Not a judge, but a pre-judge. I have the first few.
That's right. So you help refine it before it gets to the judges.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about the Big Data Bowl. It is the 8th year. Very happy about that. The COVID one was a real doozy. But now we're glad to be back in person. What has come out of, what is the best part of the Big Data Bowl from your perspective?
Well, it's twofold. It's a win-win-win. I think it's...
That's threefold.
That's threefold.
Yeah.
Threefold, wow.
This is the number
AI.
5.
AI.
So I counted the third win in my head, and I just went and said
Doesn't
it.
matter.
And the reason why I
Welcome
say
to Speaking Live.
Thank you, yeah.
People will let you
just
know very
riff and
quickly
just-
when you
yes.
mess
Yes,
up.
they
Trust me.
will.
Try doing it for 3 hours.
Exactly. It's win-win-win because
with Rich.
we certainly the NFL wins in terms of the ideas that come out of it, and we get to build a new stat. But really, the people who participate in the Big Data Bowl are getting direct access to these teams, and their ideas are fueling our ideas and what we're working on. And so when we release the data to the fans, it's more about how can we leverage the expertise of the world versus our own team. And really, it's all about inspiring the next gen stat, you could say. We've created route classification, coverage classification, tackle probability, pressure probability. All of these stats came from a fan at home working with our data that really, they didn't even have to be football fans to come up with. They just sort of saw a problem and saw that it needed a solution, and they applied their expertise to it. The 2020 winners of the Big Data Bowl, they had a model that I believe the difference between the first place team and the second place team was the same difference than the second place team and the 27th place team. And there were 2 Austrian data scientists, and they had no idea what football was. They just sort of saw it like a little bit of a video game, like Pong. This person has to get to this area with things in the way. And what did they do? They created a neural net. We still use the architecture today. It was an LTSM. Sorry, Greg, I don't know I'm talking
Sounds
about
great.
And that solution is now the architecture for several of our models. And because of that, we get to leverage the expertise of the fans at home. So please, if you're interested, if you're a data scientist, if you're a football fan, find a data scientist and help to create that next metric that we certainly miss and certainly need.
One thing I'll say, I've judged a couple years now. I'm excited to do it again this year, and I love it because it's exactly what you're talking about. There's so much enthusiasm around it. But the interesting twist this year, which I think is super important, is it's not just the data science behind it, because there is some really tremendous and impressive, analytical work that's being done. But it goes back to your point. It's like, why does this matter? And how do we tell the story about it? So that whole layer, last year, what was it? It's like pre-snap tendencies, right? Was the prompt. I don't know if I know the prompt yet this year, but it's not only solving the problem, if you will, or answering the question, but it's then how are we going to communicate this to people so that it matters and that they will care, right? And I will say that matters not just to the hardcore fans and the folks you're talking to, but if you look at the league, they had 7 games internationally this season. They're not slowing that down. So the league has this unique challenge of having to explain a very American sport to the rest of the world. So we're talking about these analytics like it's the hardcore fans, but you can turn this all around and introduce this game to new fans in a way that they're going to understand it if you actually tell the story correctly, right?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing, and it goes to processing what's being fed, but also giving it, to your point, making sure you're doing it in a very a very approachable way for the fan, right? And that's the biggest challenge that we have calling the games. What we get pumped to us as far as just the raw data and the trends and completion percentage over expected and blah, 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 we can't get on air and start saying those things because people have no idea what we're talking about. but we can present the stories. We can present the context, the trends. We can use the real, like nitty gritty, in the weeds data points as just the foundation and the backbone of when we tell this story about what the Buffalo Bills offense is and what they do and their style. We can talk about why the Philadelphia Eagles on 3rd and 6, when they break the huddle, we know that they run the ball at a certain percentage, which is the most in the league, and it's over expected in the league average. We're never going to get that across. But just a simple story between the two broadcasters on ready break as they come up to 3rd and 6 of saying, hey, throughout the whole league, you look around the league on any given week, Joe, they're dropping back to pass. They've got multiple receivers on the field. Not the Philadelphia Eagles. They are going to hand the ball off, mostly from the gun. Why are they doing it? Because they're setting up 4th down, and it gets into the tush push, and it gets into there is a nitty-gritty football strategy component, but we're not beating people over the head with run plays, pass plays, over expected, and you're giving percentages and averages and rankings, and people are looking at you like glassy-eyed. So you can tell the story that the data supports in a very easy, fun, light way that people go, oh my God, I've been watching Philadelphia games all season long. I always just thought everybody around the league ran the ball like this on 3rd and 6. I didn't realize this was so abnormal. I can't wait to watch more going forward because I'm going to be curious what they do. That's a fun moment that is data supported, but it's not just regurgitating the data on the broadcast.
But I'll tell you, what that does, though, is that if you can make a fan feel smart about what they're watching, they will watch more of it.
Of course.
Right? And so that's the whole point, and that's, your job, right?
That's our job.
Having people I am interested. I'm going to pay attention more. My antenna's up on this, right?
Absolutely.
And that is a more engaged fan, which the league wants.
The trick of it, though, not to belabor the point, the trick of it is fans have been taught the same thing for 30 years. Week in, week out, you just hear every coach, every broadcaster, every player just regurgitate the same couple coaching points in the press conferences, in the pregame interviews, the postgame interviews, in the locker room, and on air. Broadcasters still are guilty of doing this, where to your point, you know what fans are used to hearing. So you almost find you have to be careful that you don't just speak to what the fans have been told, like, hey, coming into this game, the team that works the hardest and really comes out, starts fast, and they really got to make sure they stop the run. And you give all these generic cliches, and what are those fans doing at home? They're going, I knew that. I've heard that before. Yeah, I told you. Last night at dinner, I told you they needed to stop the run. But it doesn't mean that it's true. So there's this weird go-between. We got to make sure we educate and speak and connect directly to the fan of what's actually happening. But then you also realize if you just tell the fan what they already know, they're going to go, this guy, Mike, he's pretty smart. He tells me everything that I already know. I like this guy. So there's this weird balance between the fan and the viewer and the broadcaster. Fans don't like being told things they're not comfortable with, or they've heard the contrary for so long. You don't like my team. You don't like this player. You're a hater. You like the other team. No, I'm just telling you what's happening. They don't. So there's this interesting back and forth.
There's nuance to that, right? Because yes, they want to feel smart, so you can tell them what they already know. But then everybody likes to have the one thing that,
educate them.
Yeah, and in a way that oh, now I know something else.
And you're not speaking down. Yeah,
No.
100%.
And there's also the advantage that we have in football over the other major sports, and that is the style of the game. There's a lot of advantages to having stoppages. Out of a 3-hour game window, there's only about 15 to 16 minutes of actual play. That gives Greg about 2.5 hours to tell and
I use it all.
to be able to teach the fan at home. And not only is there a game, you look at basketball and it's a little bit a refined game now. It's dunks, it's three-pointers, it's fast pace and tempo. Baseball, it's homers, strikeouts, and optimizing fielding in your pitching arsenal. Well, in football, we've got games within games happening all over the field. You can analyze the left tackle versus the defensive end. You can analyze the receiver versus the cornerback. You can analyze the whole coverage unit versus the route combinations. There's so many games within a game that you get to zoom out and zoom in on that we are so lucky to be able to have so many storytelling devices to be able to fill that 2.5 hours with really compelling insights.
So before we move totally off the Big Data Bowl, I do want to point out my favorite thing about the Big Data Bowl, which is company-sponsored health insurance, AKA people getting jobs, because I think that's a very important thing. I love that we're at over 60.
That's right. There are now over 60 current NFL staffers with teams today that
get health insurance, eh?
That get health insurance.
There we go.
That were formerly participants of the Big Data Bowl. So in 8 years, you can do the math. I can do it too. Comes out to roughly 8 per year.
Yeah,
where
obviously.
you are.
We all knew that.
It is the pipeline. It is the pipeline for the analytics staffers, and we have teams reach out to us all the time. We've got VPs now in analytics departments across the league, and they thank us because not only did we provide them a new data point through the event, but we provided them with more talent to really fuel their very big and growing departments.
And that's something that's changed, right? Talking about like the evolution of all of this. Like you used to have a couple teams maybe have somebody sitting
Seasonal.
there, right?
Seasonal employees that would do some stuff, and like
Interns,
seasonal, yeah.
But now, like these analytics staffs are amongst the biggest staffs on teams, right? They're investing in this, and it's not just from a game strategy and coaching perspective, but players are asking for this data too,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
it's not just
And agencies now have
Yeah.
all of the surrounding industry of it. I just think it's important to point that out because I like when people have a chance to grow their career, and I think very exciting stuff there. Okay, so we're going to open it up to you guys for questions. So listen to what we're saying, but also get your questions ready. I want to know, Mike, we'll start with you. What are you most excited about what's currently available, and like give me your current favorite, and then what do you want, your dream scenario, stat, whatever it is.
I am an AI optimist in the sense that I've already felt the productivity boost personally, but it's all about how can we bring the tools, the products, the data, and bring it to the fans, bring it to internally, spread it across the departments at the NFL, where we can create not just narrow AI to know what coverage a team ran, but more general AI to really be able to ask any NFL question. So we would love to create a AI bot or an AI assistant that had access to the NFL record book, and you could ask any questions about the history of the NFL. We would love to set up an AI assistant that could help you order tickets.
Okay, but give me one.
Or
just give me one that you want.
All right.
Just give me one.
I would love to get to the point where we can output AI-generated graphics that we can feed directly to the Fox broadcast, so we can go from our research to graphics.
Throw that graphic back up there, magic person with a clicker.
We should do that, yeah.
You just use Nova for that.
Exactly.
We're gonna just.
I think we just came up with new products.
It's 100% happening.
There we go. So this is one of the current graphics
how
right
you
now.
graphically represent it, right?
Exactly.
So what you're looking at right here is the amount of, what is, Greg, you take us through this, it's better.
Yeah, so under pressure, again, this is the first time I'm seeing this, but first half, obviously self-explanatory, he was 4 for 6 and 83 yards, only while facing pressure, right? So pressure is when the defender is within a certain amount of distance at the time of passing the ball. Yeah. Correct me if any of this is wrong.
You're good.
No, I got you.
When the defender is within a certain distance of the quarterback at the release point of the pass, compared to a blitz, right? So people always say, they pressure a lot. A blitz is when you bring more than 4 rushers. That is a blitz. A pressure is just how closer you
when you enter that halo.
The quarterback, when you get into that halo that's overlaid around Jalen Hurts. And then
so that's just one.
The rest of it is obviously clear. So in the second half, according to this, he was pressured 4 times. But the 4 passes when he was pressured, he did not complete any of them. And these stats are more like traditional stats, just under the guise of pressure versus clean pocket.
Exactly.
Would be the contrary. All the rest of the throws would be that.
And how we got to this, right? We just, and we've done this throughout this whole talk, where we are playing a game of telephone with Greg. We want to tell him the need-to-know football perspective of what we're seeing. But this under pressure value, we have a time series for every pass rusher, their probability of generating a pressure on a play. And that is how we generate and identify what pressure. But we don't want to tell Greg that. We just want to tell Greg, hey, it's when the quarterback's under duress. So that he can tell the story of, hey, Jalen Hurts really struggling under duress in the second half. Obviously, they lost both games to the Cowboys this year, so it definitely played a factor.
Yeah, it'd be amazing if, as we said that on the broadcast, it was processed. You guys are manually listening to what we say. The issue with the lag time, certain crews have different access to these guys than others, right? So there's some steps in between.
If you pay us more at the NFL, we'll give you access too, just so you know. Just a thing.
Conversation for another. Certain crews have more resources than others. We'll just leave it at that. But having said that, these graphics are only as good as their ability to reflect real time.
Yeah.
So at the time of the announcer saying it, the shortest amount of time that passes before that comment is then supported through a graphic like these that and reinforces what the commentator just threw out as an observation. By the time the commentator is heard, processed, graphic created, sent back to the truck, and then have the break to put it back on the screen, if you've been under pressure 2 more times since that happened, because it took you a minute and a half, the graphic is completely irrelevant. So the real-time communication between the booth and the guys generating a lot of this information, the tighter we can shrink that lag time, the more willing and able we are to have these types of graphics support the words and the pictures the broadcasters are sharing.
So for everyone
lucky
listening,
you know
I think
AWS.
this is a challenge.
I said you're so lucky you know AWS. We can help you with that.
Well,
we got the
here's the
best
thing.
crew.
Here's the thing. We get closed captioning real time.
Yeah.
Why don't we just read your closed captioning data and one of your smart AWS engineers could create something that could read that closed captioning?
I think I'm going to tackle
But
that.
I even
There you
think
go.
Mike's
I think that's something I can handle.
You're
What
welcome.
Mike is saying is just the analytic itself. We know it's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
The graphic is generated in real time, so it's almost going the other way, which is this is showing up, and you know to talk about pressure in this instance because
That'd
the
be
graphics
wonderful.
being fed
It'd
to
be
you.
wonderful if we
And what we have to do is we have to work with your crew during the off season to create the API that would integrate into that specific graphic. And if we were to create, right? And if we were to create that, then we could get it as
telling
soon as
people that
Greg
for a
is,
long time.
as soon as Greg says it, then they could go under pressure graphic, go. And we can inch our way to getting more and more of this data in real time to the fans.
Right, like so look at the one on the left about Caleb Williams.
Yep.
And we're not going to get too into the weeds about like any of this, but just as a viewer, how much more of an interesting conversation around Caleb Williams is talking about how last year the Bears, they were historically bad taking sacks. So everyone's like, oh my God, the offensive line stinks, he stinks. And like when you're talking about Caleb Williams, how much cooler is it to talk about his improvement through the context of this, right? Hey, the number one value of a quarterback is when you're under pressure. Don't turn the ball over, don't take sacks, and generate big plays on the move. Like that, if you look at the top quarterbacks in the league, you can have that kind of high-level, cool conversation about Caleb Williams. This graphic now gets put onto the screen through the data that they have to just further reinforce. I'm not going to say all of that in a sentence. Hey, this year he's been sacked 119 times. He's only been taken down on a sack 14, so it's 11.8%. Last year he was 17%. You can't say it, but there's a cool story about the improvement of Caleb Williams and the improvement under Ben Johnson and the improvement of the Bears. You can have that conversation and then let the graphics speak about the real nitty-gritty stuff, which is in essence what my comments, while more general, are based on me spending all week reading that information. I'm just generalizing it into more of like a conversational tone that I'm not just beating people over the head with numbers.
That's why he's the best.
Oh, yeah. Well, and also you could get into a conversation about strategy because sometimes games get boring at the end, and if it gets boring,
I called the game yesterday. It was 26-0.
Sometimes happens. See, these are a lot of Seahawks fans here. So, but ultimately,
They're good.
they get a little boring at the end, right? So you throw that graphic up and pretend it was the Bears in this case. That's up 26-0, right? You say, all right, well, what's Ben Johnson doing? And you could have a great conversation about different run plays, different kind of get you out of trouble things, whatever it is, and you could start a conversation from that as well. So it's not just...
If not, you spend the whole time talking about the ball. Nice throw, nice catch. He ran fast. He made the guy miss. Yeah, no shit. Yeah, we see that. Like, if you don't, it just gets very redundant and boring. In my opinion, not everyone likes it, but in my opinion, that's boring.
Okay, so does anyone have a question ready? Anyone question? Good. Shout it
First
out
one's
real.
always the hardest.
No, I'm gonna repeat it so in the spirit of getting people healthcare and making analytics, making the sport safer. Do we see a path to applying what we
It's
are
already
doing
happening.
from the NFL at a lower level of football?
It's already happening. I mean, look at the equipment. It used to be everybody wore the same kind of helmet, right? But, offensive line is going to absorb, versus a quarterback versus a wide receiver. People are taking hits in this game much differently. So now you have position-specific helmets that didn't exist years ago, and that has trickled down to college and even the high school level. So the investments that are being made, and I would argue that if you guys are banning, hip drop tackle, everybody else is banning hip drop tackle. So the investments that are being made, especially in this player health and safety side of the NFL, have impact not only within the game of football, but all sports, right? And I also think just the pressure of the league investing that much in player health and safety should put every other property on notice. You should be doing this too. And I particularly would love to see the same level of investment and research and rigor applied to women's sports and health and safety in that space as well, because that is a very barren space right now.
If you go check out that exhibit, there's a series of helmets over there. That's probably the biggest difference. Certainly what you could do with our XY tracking data is measure collisions. We're not doing that at Next Gen Stats. We're not trying to tell stories about collisions. But you can bet the player health and safety department is measuring and trying to identify what is leading to these injuries and how can we make the game safer.
The helmet, my two middle school boys, I coached the middle school team at their school. The helmets that every single one of our boys, not just my two boys, because we can get one, every single kid on the team, there's 50 boys on the team, 7th and 8th grade, every single one of those kids wears a helmet that is the exact, different sizes obviously, but it's the exact same helmet when you turn on TVs on Sunday that the NFL guys wear.
Oh, perfect. We have a microphone. I don't have to try to repeat you. I'm sorry for butchering it.
Wonderful. What can business leaders learn from all this?
I can take that one for you.
Oh, go.
When I'm looking at across different businesses, the thing that people always ask me about the Next Gen Stats is, how do I speak clearly? What is the communication? Because it's a two-way street. Greg needs to be able to ask the people who know how to do the technical part in a way that they can actually understand what he's asking for, and they need to communicate to Greg what the insights are, what the deliverables are. For your company, it could be which products should we focus more of our money and resources on versus others. It's the communication. I need to say, if I'm Mike, I need to say, these are the parameters of what we can do. This is what we're able to give you. Greg needs to say, I'd like to know this. Then they need to say, here's this. And it's that give and take, the communication between both of those people that make the whole thing work. Because if he doesn't know how to ask the question and he doesn't know how to tell him what the answers are, it doesn't really matter if you have the best data in the entire world. No one's going to use it.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I think, it's the investment in it, right? What the league has invested an awful lot in trying to make sense of their data in a lot of different ways. We're talking about, largely Next Gen Stats. We're talking about player health and safety. They've also invested a tremendous amount in understanding their fan data a lot better. They had 90 billion rows of fan data, right, that they had to try to structure and get insights out of. So I think it's just that mindset. What business leaders need to do is every business has data. Are you investing in structuring that data, trying to glean insights from that data, be predictive about your modeling with that data to help you prepare for the future of your business? So I think it's all of those things.
And admit what you don't know. That's the other one that I found. Because I think a lot of people are like, it's perfect. And then you're like, no, your model has this flaw. And then everyone, whatever. So,
well, I also think, to Greg's point about, talking in storytelling rather than in data or data storytelling in some ways, but the idea that you have to communicate the need to know things for your business, right? It's about putting it in a way that you could distill. I've never mentioned a neural network to Greg before, right? But I've mentioned it here because I understand that there's probably some technicals in the audience that want to hear about how the sausage is made. When we talk to Greg, we're talking football. And so I think it's all about how do you leverage the information and the data you have, to become experts in your data, but then to be decisive and to know what's valuable, to know the context. And once you're an expert in your own data, then you become more confident that you can make those data-driven decisions that do come with that positive expected value out of the outcome.
Oh, do we have a
Right here. He's got the mic.
oh, someone with the mic. Go ahead. Whoever's the mic, and then we'll get to you next.
Hey, I have a question for maybe Cynthia or Mike. Do you guys think that the analytics will mature to the point where it can essentially replace play callers?
Hopefully not broadcast.
Absolutely not.
No, the reason,
Absolutely not.
there's always, we get this question a lot too, which is the
Yep.
data's taking over and the data's making decisions. No, it's not, because a coach is going to know if he tweaked, his ankle on that last
That's
play.
right.
If he's got something going on in his head, if the locker room was in, there's something going on there. Like, it is a tool in the toolkit. I know it's your question, but it is not the answer.
I remember 10 years ago at the MIT Sloan Sports Conference, Billy Beane was up there, and he had his two deputies. I think it was the Paul DePodesta was up there, who was with him in Oakland, and then the other GM who was with the Dodgers at the time. And it was the most fascinating talk I had heard, because obviously I'm born out of the Moneyball era. And what Billy Beane said blew my mind. He said, early on, I think it actually might have been Paul DePodesta, who played by Jonah Hill in the movie, if you've seen it. He said, when we first were printing out spreadsheets and giving it to Billy, we were basically giving it to him, but pulling it back, because we still wanted Billy to use his intuition, his expertise that he's developed. And so when Billy said that, I don't make a decision, I don't go any higher than 30-70 analytics gut. That 70% gut is trained over 20, 30 years, and the data should either support, validate, check, whatever it is, but the data is just a tool, and there's so much context that it doesn't measure. How does the left tackle play in? Is there an injury that you need to know about? Is there some psychological bias or advantage that you can feel that the data won't feel? And I feel like when it comes down to it, it's the tools that will feed into the future play callers to make them more optimal decision makers than just an automated decision alone.
When I worked for a very famous coach, before he was weird, he told me that he would like to know his own biases so he doesn't make mistakes. He told me that he believes in his system an average player could be above average if the right attributes are identified and utilized. And there was very clear parameters of what this person wanted and what this person didn't want, what ills they could live with and what they couldn't, in play calling, in all things. And what he was trying to do very, very smartly was not allow his own internal psychology to bias what he was calling on the field. So it's more of a check and balance and more of the tool in the tool belt, because we don't really have a hard time identifying very, very elite good and very, very not great. The middle is very messy. So how can I select for attributes that make my middle a little bit better as opposed to go a little bit worse? Go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation today. All of the information is really interesting. There's so much data that you deal with, but I'm wondering, is there a list of data you wish you had? Like, what don't you have yet that you want?
Good question.
I could actually say that
We should not give him an
it.
answer here because we'll be here for 20 minutes.
Yeah, so the data that we're actually now collecting for the first year, we're going from 2D to 3D. And this is the first year we've collected it. It's through Sony Hawkeye systems. They're in soccer, they're in tennis, they're in all the different sports already. And what this is going to unlock is full pose estimation, 27-point full pose estimation at 60 hertz a second. And what that's going to do is it's going to be like, we've got a couple more stats to do with 2D, and then it's going to be a whole new inflection point about what we can do.
Arm angles.
What release point, stance, just knowing if a player has their hand in the ground, or if they're in a 2-point stance, or they're route running. The amount of data that's going to come out of this three-dimensional data source is going to not just affect the stats that we can create, but it's going to affect the way that you watch games at home. Next Monday night, ESPN, Disney Plus, there is a Monsters, Inc. game that will be featured for the Eagles and the Rams. This is using our data in near real time to recreate the players on the field using Monsters, Inc. avatars. If you have kids at home, please try to turn that game on because it's for them. And really the whole goal is to bring data not just in the form of stats, but through experiences. And we're excited for the future of the fan at home and what they're going to be able to see, not just during TV broadcasts and not just alt broadcasts, but online through applications, through products and tools like NFL Pro. This is sort of the inflection point of that next era of next-gen stats.
How many Monsters Inc. characters can you name? That's really the only question that people.
I've got a 1.5-year-old, so I'm just outside of the realm of the monsters.
Embarrassing. You can make AI software predictive algorithms, and you don't know the characters in Monsters Inc. I'm
Who's your
disappointed.
favorite?
Mike, Sully, Terry and Terry, Bob.
Boo? How about Boo?
I know them all. Boo. I've only
All
seen
right.
that movie 700.
2 more questions. Here we go.
Okay, my question's for Mike. I'm not sure when you worked for the Vikings, but so I don't know if the data availability is comparable, but could you compare the kinds of questions and models you were working on with the team versus what you've done with NextGen, or how it's changed that?
Yeah, it's a great question. 10 years ago, we were Excel, Microsoft Excel. R was, the programming language was becoming a thing, and certainly Python was, just in the early days of data science. We were just taking all of the data we had and trying to, we actually hired an AI or a data scientist to help us with the 2015 draft. That was the draft. We ended up with Stephon Diggs in the 5th round, Daniil Hunter in the 3rd round, and it was just a tool.
They aren't on the team anymore.
That's right. Well, they're still in the league.
No, they're in the league, but
Oh, yeah. And
shouldn't have left.
They should not have left. And the idea was, how can we help the scouts make better, more informed decision? So what we did was we just said, how do we make this? We've got the results of our models. How do we make an impact on the draft? We just said, you know what? If you're in the top 20th percentile, you probably have a better chance to make it than the bottom 25th percentile. So let's just put a blue sticker on the players who have a top 20 percentile and an orange sticker in the bottom. And we're not going to do anything else. Rick Spielman was the GM at the time. Just go ahead and use that as it may. And he ended up drafting 9 blue stickers out of our 10 picks, 0 orange dots. And it ended up being a really strong draft class. And it was just about, hey, your scouts set the board. Now let analytics validate your decision, and that's how you make decisions. Well, now they've got more data than you can count at the college level to make much more robust models, much more, you're no longer living in Excel and R, you're now in Python and getting much deeper into the architecture to predict performance. So I think that the amount of data and the capabilities and the size of the staff has really made it so that the NFL draft, you're not seeing, suboptimal decisions as you were 10 years ago across the board.
Last one. Oh. Yep.
Thanks. What's the story around providing some of this data to individual teams?
I can answer
in
that.
real
You can
time
do the
and
two.
that sort of thing.
They all get, there's rules. Oh, we have rules for everything. They all get access to the same thing. It's gated at certain times. So they don't get it during the game.
So the idea from the competition committee and the football operations department was during the game itself, we want to limit the amount of technology, right? We wanted to make it so that you can prepare as much as you want, but from the whistles, there's no technology involved. So our
internet.
No internet.
So if
right?
you have you can use Excel.
Yeah, that's actually a new initiative that we started last year. We call it spreadsheet in the booth.
Yes.
There's one computer with a spreadsheet that you can program ahead of time.
No internet, no next-gen stats, no RSS feed, no CSV file, zero new stuff.
And so we're inching closer to some tools, but the idea of competitive balance is key and crucial. So now you've seen, teams are certainly ingesting the data as soon as the game's over, and they're now creating those reports for the coaching staff. So now you know that the players hit their max speeds, or how are they playing relative to their baselines and stats. It's really about they're using it for player health. And,
So they all get the same information. It's gated at a certain amount of time, and how they use it, that is where you can get an edge.
Exactly.
So teams who have done a better job either investing in the right people or have the smarter people, they do it better. Teams that have not, I don't know if they use it. I'm not sure, but they get it.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, some of that position data would be awesome for position coach, right? Of
course.
They get it if they want it. It's all there for them if they can get it, just not during the game. Yep. All right, so my last question, because I don't get a chance to ask Greg Olson to give me we're getting personalized Monday Night Football like who's gonna win. We get the best analysts in the business, and I'm not saying that because you're there. Like I say it all the time, and when you're not around.
Keep saying it.
I will keep saying it. Where's your agent? I know he's here somewhere.
Don't worry about him. We can negotiate directly.
That's right. Yeah, well, that's true. But I want to know. Let's phrase it this way, because everyone will be like, "Who's gonna win and why?" I don't want to know that. Right now, the Giants are underdogs. We know that. We know there's some history there, maybe like a good helmet catch. You know that. How do the Giants upset the Patriots in this matchup?
Well, obviously, I think the return of Jackson Dart, for as fun as Jameis Winston is, and he
is fun.
He is a thrill a minute.
He should be permanent 33rd quarterback.
They should just have a camera and a microphone. Yeah, I saw someone say like he's like the universal backup.
He should.
The second you lose your quarterback, you have to play Jameis, and he just plays for whatever team
and does whatever he wants.
I actually audibly laughed when someone said that. It was very true. So Jackson Dart's back. This will be the first time that Jackson Dart has played quarterback for the Giants with Mike Kafka and not Brian Daboll. So what does that look like? I don't think anybody knows. I don't think the AI knows. The football guy, we certainly don't know. So we called the last Giants game, which ended up being the last game of Brian Daboll's tenure, was in Chicago, and they had the big lead in the second half, and they decided not to go for the touchdown on 4th and goal at that half-yard line, kicked the field goal, and Caleb Williams took them back-to-back for touchdown drives, and they lost. He got fired a couple days later. So I don't think anyone really knows what does the Mike Kafka's vision, what does now a Mike Kafka-led team, led offense, led locker room look like with Jackson Dart under center. They've also since fired their defensive coordinator, so that's a whole new thing.
So things are going great there.
So I think this, it's going
great.
So I think there's a lot of unknowns for the Giants. Would I be shocked if all of a sudden they went out there and they beat New England tonight? No. I think New England's good. I think Drake May is fantastic. I think he's that next group of superstar high-level quarterbacks for the next 10-plus years. I think he's that type of physical player. I think he's got that sort of mentality, the approach. He's been like that. He grew up in Charlotte. I've known him since he was a young kid. He is special. He's unique. Do I think that Patriots roster is a Super Bowl roster? I don't. I think Mike Vrabel's done an unbelievable job turning that around. Them and the Minnesota Vikings spent more money than anybody in NFL free agency, certainly under the idea that you have a young rookie quarterback, Drake May, and respectively, obviously J.J. McCarthy for Minnesota. You spend all that money in free agency, you spend all that money in veterans because you're saying I got a 4 or 5 year window where I'm not paying my quarterback $60+ million and I can allocate my resources. It appears as of now like the Patriots struck gold, and these contracts, this roster turnover, obviously drafting Drake May, hiring Vrabel, it's been one good decision after another, and they're the number 1 seed if the season ended today in the AFC. So on the best team, again, everything we know, New England is the best team. I think as we see every single week, sometimes the one little flip, the one little change, the game goes your way. Would I be shocked if Jackson Dart comes out tonight, plays free, plays fast, operates this Kafka system, and they beat New England? I wouldn't be shocked.
Do you think that, so Mike Kafka, a former quarterback, do you think that changes anything just from you're a former player, put on that hat for a second? I mean, Brian Daboll had, the experience with Josh Allen, of course. That's kind of how he got his job. Mike Kafka comes from the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs, and he was a quarterback in college. He had a cup of tea in the NFL. Yeah. And how do you think that sort of changes?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that at least
I'm looking for hope for some. Maybe there's.
No, yeah. I just call it as
they've got a good.
I don't
got a good
particularly care who wins, but I'm just calling it balls and strikes. I think what's going to be really interesting. Brian Daboll, his history with Josh Allen early in his career, and even yesterday, Josh Allen has always been a run quarterback. There's a run element. Jackson Dart, some of his best plays this season have been the design quarterback runs. And then all of a sudden in that Bears game, he ran for 2 touchdowns on designed quarterback runs. On a third long run, he gets blasted, fumbles, smashes his head into the Soldier Field turf, gets a concussion, hasn't played since. So now he returns. You're an interim head coach, theoretically coaching for the job. I don't know how realistic whether he gets the job or not, but you're saying, I want to win or else someone else is going to coach Jackson Dart. You just lost him to injury a couple weeks ago running him. Can you be a good offense if you don't run him? Can you win? But is the front office saying, we can't get him hurt, the season's over? And then I'm Mike Kafka going, well, my season's not over. If we stink, I'm looking for a new job next year. And yes, I don't want Jackson Dart to get hurt, certainly. But like protecting the future quarterback of the team that I'm not the coach of is not in my own best interest. So I think there's a lot of very interesting aspects at play for interim coaches, young quarterbacks, lost season. I don't know. We'll find out.
Mike, if you were going to give the one stat for tonight that you think is the most just one, what's the most predictive one from the Next Gen Stats packet? Because I know it's just marinating in your head.
Totally, every game this week, actually. Brian Burns and his ability to create quick pressures.
The edge rusher for I just
For
want
the
to
Giants.
just in case
Yep.
someone doesn't know.
Thank you for the context.
Yep.
Brian Burns, so they've got Abdul Carter, the rookie that they just drafted last year, and then they got Kayvon Thibodeau. So they got 3 really good pass rushers.
What about Dexter Lawrence?
Dexter
Sometimes
Lawrence
he rushes
inside.
a passer too.
Absolutely. His pressure numbers are down a little bit this year, but always one of the best nose tackles. And what Brian Burns brings to them, the ability to create quick pressure, is if you get to Drake May, he has been prone to throw interceptions in his career if you go back to UNC. And so the X factor is this. Will Campbell, the 3rd overall pick last year, the left tackle for the Patriots, went on IR last week. He had played every game. He'd been lights out at left tackle. If they can get their pass rushers going, Brian Burns, Carter, Thibodeau, Lawrence, and they could take advantage of a little bit of a weak link on that left side of that offensive line, it could be a difference maker to create those negative plays that would keep New York in the game for the long run.
So I've promised the Giants defense that I would make fun of them about how bad they are at defending outside runs until they stop doing it, and they won't stop doing it. So if the Patriots are going to win, you're going to see some nice outside rushes because they're historically bad. Highest explosive play rate on outside runs allowed is the Giants by like 1 million. The most yards, any metric, any next gen stat that you want on outside runs, who's the worst?
The Giants.
Yeah.
And guess what happens when you rush those outside edge rushers? You give up contain on the outside. So that is absolutely Travion Henderson and Ramon J. Stevenson certainly could be.
We're not talking about the T word today because we have a Michigan grad here, and T went to that terrible school down south of Michigan, so we're not going to talk about him.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't worry, it's 4-1 over the past 5 years. It's okay.
Yes.
Julie, who wins tonight?
So the Patriots. I'm also a Patriots fan.
I know.
So go Pats. Thank you. Wish the Lions were better this year, though.
It's already 10-0.
10-0.
Who scored?
Wait, what?
Marcus Jones.
They returned to
touchdown.
punt.
Right, this is supposed to
That's
be the
always
game.
what
We
makes
gotta go.
Yeah,
That's
we gotta
always
go.
what makes predicting these games
The game
so
is going to
hard.
be
Like,
right here, right, Nicole?
You can't account for strip sacks and interceptions and pick sixes. Like that's where it gets so hard. I always start off my evaluation saying an even game, an even possession, offense versus offense, not taking into account punt return touchdowns. Who's better, right? And now all of a sudden, when the better team gets something like that,
Could be a long night.
it's virtually impossible for the underdog to overcome that unless they get a bunch of them on their. You look at the Panthers beating the Rams yesterday. Stafford hadn't thrown an interception in what seemed like a year. He throws
Set a
one on the
record.
5-yard line, and then the next possession he throws one for a pick six.
Insane.
You can't bake that into your predictions. You don't think that's going to happen, but it's the game.
By live sports.
Well,
is
thank
fun.
you all so much. We held you over because this was such a good conversation. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Stay
That was
and
so
watch
fun.
Monday Night
Thank you so
Football.
much.
There's tons of great conversations here at reInvent all week long.
So good.
And have so much fun. See you guys next time.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Yeah, you got it. Ugh.